Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office for January the 4th, 2024. In today's detailed weather forecast and discussion, we are monitoring two big storm systems that are going to be impacting the Midwest and the eastern seaboard, both bringing intense snowfall, some heavy rainfall, and some severe weather. But also, one of these storm systems could bring down quite a bit of cold air, especially for the Pacific Northwest and the northern tier of the United States, including for California. We'll break down all those details right now. So looking at the European model for this afternoon, we can see where the heaviest snow is falling over northern New Mexico, as well as some rainfall over western Texas. This system is going to get a little bit more crazier as it gets further east. So when we go forward, we can see a surface low developing over southern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. This is going to bring some of the heaviest rainfall, maybe some severe weather, where a marginal risk of severe weather is anticipated in the deep southmost regions, like right along the Gulf Coast. But once this system gets into the eastern seaboard, it might drag enough colder air down out of the north, where some areas right in here could get a little bit of freezing rain. And we've been talking about this in previous model forecasts, how there is a chance for some freezing rain and some ice over portions of Virginia. And then, of course, further north than that, there should be enough colder air in the deeper layers where it should be all snow, not so much in the way of freezing rain. And then this system gets into the northeast, as we talked about yesterday, between Saturday night into Sunday morning. So this would be January the 6th and the 7th. And so when we actually kind of take our magnifying glass and zoom in a little bit, we can see where the snow is going to be. Now, there is still uncertainty in the models, and I wish I had my best forecast for you all, but it is all based on the exact track of that surface low. Okay, there's a benchmark for a reason. If this surface low is a little stronger and maybe a little further north, then maybe areas right here will see only rain. But if the surface low is here, maybe a little weaker, maybe a little stronger, and drags more colder air out of the north, then say like New York City, central New Jersey, as well as, say, Queens and Long Island, including for City Island, as well as if you are in Nantucket, if you're in Massachusetts, if you are in Connecticut, Rhode Island, you have the best chances of seeing snow in that scenario. And so in today's model forecast, if we look at the 12Z, that's the current run that we're looking at on the Euro. If we looked at yesterday's run from last night, we can see, there's still some uncertainty reigning in New York City. Okay, even before, it might be on the snowy side at first, but then turning a little bit more into rain on the backside, because again, where that cooler air sits. If we look at yesterday's 12Z run, we can see a very similar case scenario here. So again, a few miles here could make a huge difference. But the chances of you all seeing snow up here, say on the I-95 corridor to the north in Syracuse and Albany, your chances of seeing some intense snowfall are very high right now, where you might pick up at least a foot of snow. But this is the benchmark here, still on the deck of possibilities that you could still see rain or you could still see snow, depending on where that surface low exactly tracks, okay? And so looking at the 12Z now, a lot of snow over Long Island, New York. New York City could get quite a bit of snow on this current run if it all pans out, but it would be a very wet snow, more like a slushy snow instead of a dry snow, which would be more powdery in that favor. So, snowfall totals here according to the European deterministic forecast. This is through the next 90 hours, the next 4 or so days. And yeah, still spitting out at least a foot of snow in these areas, okay? So from central Pennsylvania, if you are in Philadelphia, you might get 2 to 4 inches. If you are in northern New Jersey, you might get as much as 6 to 12 inches. But again, that benchmark, if this goes a little further north, say northern New Jersey might see much lesser snow versus what the deterministic Euro is showing. For the central portion of New York and further south, you might see a foot or more, as well as, say, Connecticut and Massachusetts, like Boston, could get well over a foot of snow, possibly a foot and a half at this given point in time. If we looked at yesterday's model run, again, further north with the most snowfall totals, this is wobbling all over the place. There is no straightforward forecast. And when we look at the GFS model right now, the 12Z output, we can see similar snowfall amounts here. Very little over the downtown New York area, maybe 2 to 4 inches, versus almost 20 inches of snowfall in the central and just in the southernmost portion here of New York, as well as Connecticut and Massachusetts. So yes, we do know this is going to produce a lot of snow. That's why there are already winter storm watches issued for these areas. These could go for winter storm warnings in days to come from the National Weather Service, which means there is more than likely a likelihood that you will see some significant snow and maybe some blizzard conditions because of how intense the snowfall rates will be, along to go with some strong wind. Now that we talked about that, we really want to focus in on the west because, yes, as that's going on in the downtown New York area, also California and the Sierra Nevada mountain range going to get another system by this weekend, starting on Saturday, a much colder one. In fact, the coldest system of the season is going to be upon us this weekend. And so when we go forward, that skirts our area, maybe between about 0.05 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch for the valley. As far as rainfall totals go, maybe a foot of snow for the mountains of the Sierra. So not a particularly wet system because it's coming in out of the north where the air is drier and it's colder. Remember, cold air holds less moisture than warmer air does. And so storms that come out of the north tend to be drier, but also bring the other variety, and that is much colder, wintry-like temperatures that are anticipated. That goes into the Four Corners by Sunday, the January 7th time frame, and then eventually this really intensifies once it gets into the high plains on the 9th of January. Maybe some severe weather. There are still questions and uncertainties in regards to how this is all going to evolve right now. I can tell you right now, the Storm Prediction Center has maintained a slight risk for severe weather here for day 5 through day 6, perhaps, because again, there's not enough consistency to upgrade that to a 30 yet this far out in time. But still, going to see some intense rainfall for the deep south. Very wet thunderstorms. May see some flooding out of this. Georgia, the Carolinas, certainly some big time heavy rainfall. This is a mighty rain producer. And then, of course, for the northern tier of the storm, you're going to get snow out of this. Now, how much snow? The GFS is a little more aggressive still, whereas the European model is not so much. And that's likely to do that. The fact is that the GFS has a much tighter surface low than the European model does. And we can see that clearly here. If we go to the 12Z run, let's kind of forward this. You can see there a 985 millibar system versus on the European model, it is actually it's about as deep. Interesting that they're not showing a lot of snow. I think maybe more warm air advection is likely to blame for this, which isn't surprising with a very dynamic system. So we will just have to wait and see on how much snowfall can fall and get squeezed out over Indiana. But on this particular model run, Indiana is not seeing snow at all, unless you want to kind of cherry pick the GFS model, and that's when you could find more snow in the area. The 18Z run is rendering right now as I make this video, and you can see much more snowier scenario. In fact, so much so if we just look at the GFS here, portions of central Indiana might see a foot or more of snow versus the European model, not so much. Not so much. So there's a lot of uncertainty still to be worked out with that system. But guess what? It's not coming alone. We might see another winter storm far out in time. Now, of course, beyond the range of possibilities here, this is 150 hours out. We have another system that is moving into California and Nevada. That would be storm number 3, of course. And then this could move into the plains, but this one does not look to have as much moisture or as much dynamical moisture transport northward. There could still be some rain along this front, of course, but pretty intense snowfall over, say, Wisconsin as well as Michigan. Yet again, that would be storm 3, and then maybe a 4th one way out there. So now this doesn't mean what you just saw means we're actually going to have that. This is very far out. This is 10 days out from today. And so there's a lot of changes to be ironed out among the global computer models to better simulate, okay, well, this is how the pattern is going to be, or this is the storm that is going to develop within this pattern. But long story short, or kind of broadening out, kind of the conclusion here is the pattern is going to remain very active. Many storms are coming, some of them cold, some of them not so much. Some of them can produce severe weather, some of them may not be so much. But what I do know for sure is there'd be a lot of cold air in the wake of this system in particular. Rainfall totals, I wanted to show you all this really quickly for the southeastern U.S. and for the mid-Atlantic coast. Of course, you might see as much as 3 to 5 inches. Still quite a bit of rainfall over the next 10 days over the southeastern and eastern half of the country. Then, of course, maybe more storms for California. Well, fingers crossed about midweek's storm next week. A little bit of uncertainty in that. Quite a bit of rainfall for the Pacific Northwest, but unfortunately, it is still below climatological averages per 10 days. So with snowfall totals and rainfall totals along to go with the timing of the next 2 storms at least, maybe the third one that we could be looking at here, we're going to talk about the temperatures, because now I'm getting a little concerned, and this is not getting just my attention, but this is making social media headlines on Twitter as well. So when briefly looking at Twitter, then we'll get back to the forecast. Nathan Santo Domingo has also made a post on this, mentioning about how cold it is going to be, and wait until you see my forecast in just a second. Oppenheimer Ranch project even touching upon this as well. So this is meeting some big Twitter people out there. This guy has 2619. I wanted to give you a special shout out, Nathan, for sharing this. I mean, look at it. The last 2 posts been talking a lot about this, and this gets my attention. This is a big Twitter guy here, 2,600 followers, and also Oppenheimer Ranch project even touching upon this briefly, and this guy here has 7,800 followers. Not super duper duper big on social media, but you get the idea. This is meeting the eyes of people that are bigger than me, and I'm getting up there, of course, with how big I'm getting on Twitter. You guys can go follow me right now with the link in the description below this video. I'll probably start talking a lot about this if it continues. Probably will be posting something on it today, because what you're about to see is truly ironic and very comical. You don't see this very often. So let's get straight into these temperatures. So first of all, when we look at the temperature or air temperature forecast, you can see that the Arctic air, we know it's to the north right now, right? The polar vortex is really beginning to nosedive right now. Once it does, look at what's going to happen. These systems start bringing down the colder air, and when we go out to nearly a few days, 3 to 5 days, yeah, these are some really cold temperatures, even for California. Upper 20s next week in our area at night, low to upper 30s to low 40s during the day. That's being indicated on the European model. That really gets my attention. When we see temperatures that cold day and night, they are well below average. Climatology from a very warm December, one of the warmest on record, the top 3 on record, that is. And so when we go forward, it really goes downhill. Watch this. This is the 10th of January, right? Nothing much going on. We might get a brief warm up before temperatures really huddle down again. This is the 12th of January, then the 13th. I mean, this right here is come on. You're seeing the coldest temperatures potentially across the world in Montana, as well as Wyoming and northern Idaho. That's negative 50 to negative 60 degree temperatures, air temperature. When you factor in the apparent temperature, might make it feel like negative 80 degrees. So how about that? Look at the wind chill in our area, single digits for California. So yeah, this is not your typical Arctic outbreak. This is historic by all means, in such a way, when we look at the temperature anomaly forecast, I mean, off the charts. Some areas here, especially in Oregon and portions of Northern California, Northern Nevada, as well as Idaho and Montana, could see temperatures almost 80 degrees below average. 80 degrees. And it's not just one model run, folks. The 0Z indicating a similar scenario, only further east in this model run. But when we go back to the 12Z run from yesterday, I mean, it's there, okay, but you got to understand too, when we go to now, it's in the same spot. It's just now we could forward a little bit more frames and see it progress a little more. Long story short, the Euro has been very consistent at a very big Arctic outbreak, while the Canadian as well is even on board with this. You can see the Arctic air mass really sinking southward. This has to be worth noting, worth watching in days to come, because this can do a lot of damage to crops, to infrastructure that is not, I mean, our buildings are not going to handle heating into some extreme degree here, because everyone's going to have their heaters on just like they would in the summertime to have their air conditioners on. We could have some power grid failures because everyone's going to have their heater blasting with this. Something that I will be talking about as long as it remains in global computer model consensus, deterministic forecasts. So now with the temperatures out of the way, let's talk about the polar vortex, folks. This is ironic. I'm not trying to hype up. I'm not trying to cause fear mongering. I know that's what you guys tell me all the time, sometimes in comments, like, David's scaring people. Stop fear mongering. Stop this. All right. I'm basing it off of what the models are showing me, right? So I'm going to say something if it gets my attention, and that right there really does. And you guys could probably agree with me on that. So polar vortex, okay, this is going to take a beeline southward. Let's take a look. All right, so this is the 500 millibar Jetstream forecast, of course. You can see the polar vortex already is pretty far south as it is. Below average heights up here, as noted in the 500 millibar height map, as well as the Jetstream. And then another trough moves through, right? That's going to bring the dynamical system. And then guess what? It's coming. Watch this trough over, say, the Pacific Northwest. That really kicks butt. Look at that. With a very strong speed max. Even at 250 millibars, that's a very strong, solid jet cutting across there into California. And if that happens again, I could understand why the European model is going this bullish in its forecast output on these temperatures, because of that polar vortex being very, very strong. Again, I've not seen anything like this in my history of tracking weather, at least for the West. Now, for the East, it's a different story. That's probably more common than not, because you guys are prone to the cold temperatures to begin with. But wow, seeing some upper teens, low 20s at night in the Central Valley in our area, that will kill crops. That will kill a lot of fruit, bearing trees, anything that has bearing fruit on it, it's going to hurt. It's not going to be pretty when this is all said and done. Just to show you how far below average the heights actually are, oh boy, wait until you see this, right? We know where our polar vortex is going to be, right? But look at that trough. Way below average. I mean, that bottoms out. That is 47.5, 48 decameters below average with the heights here. This is, wow, this is really a big deal. I mean, look at your freezing line, even into California. Wow, if this goes any further south, we're in trouble. That's all I gotta say. I'm not liking what I'm seeing with such cold temperatures in the western half of the United States. And there is enough consistency among the European deterministic forecast and its ensembles that the Climate Prediction Center now has really made a huge indent, huge drop in their likelihood of below average temperatures. There's an 80% in Montana. There's an 80% in Southern California. There's a 70% chance that we could have below average temperatures, and there's even a slight to moderate risk for us here in the office to see well below average temperatures with hypothermia. That is also a possibility. Whereas, look at the eastern half of the U.S. I mean the Eastern Seaboard, you're not going to partake in this very much at all because of the way the pattern is setting up. So yeah, there's enough consistency where we have to start watching on how this all evolves in days to come. Well, that's going to do it though, but before I do in the video, I do want you all to check out my new Discord server. It is out and released to the public. So if you guys want to check it out, please click the link below to join the server. Weather Force is what it is. We have some cool things that we're planning for the server. So if you guys are new and you guys have Discord and you know how to use Discord, please click the link below right now to join the Discord server. Otherwise, you can follow me here just on YouTube, also on my Twitter page as well, with links in the description. Please subscribe if you guys are new, hit the like button, and share this with their family and friends on social media. As always, that is going to do it. I'll see you back here tomorrow with another weather forecast.